Okay, it's time to get on with these wings. We've already come through and cleaned and prepped our wings. We have everything completed and inspected and made sure that everything is set up just the way it's supposed to be. All of our parts are installed. We've come through with our anti-chafe tape. We've taped around all of our top gussets to make sure that everything that's on the ribs is got anti-chafe tape over it all the way around to the trailing edge. We've done it all the way across the whole wing. I've got both wings prepped up at this point. I'm going to cover both wings at the same time, but we're just going to film one of them as I go. Out here on the end, I've put a plate over the end of it, and I've just riveted it in right into the steel tube, and I've sealed this around the back edge to keep any chance of any metal shavings that are inside the spar from getting out into our fabric. This plate that I've put on here, I'm going to drill a 3/16 hole right in the center of it, and that's for my rotating jig. When I paint the wings, I like to put them both in the spray booth at the same time, be able to rotate them around all different directions so that I can paint them real nice and easy. We're going to start out by sealing this into the tube with fabric. If you were going to run strobes or anything that needs wires through your wings, at this point you'd go ahead and get those wires through there and get that taken care of. This particular wing does not get strobes. So I'm going to seal these ends with fabric right here, just to make sure that none of the metal shavings out of the inside of that spar get out into our wing. We've also gone through every little piece We've used painter's caulk, and we've sealed the front of all the tubes because you have fabric rivets that go all the way down through here. So every time you pop a rivet, it knocks a little bit of metal shavings loose inside the tube. So we want to make sure that those don't get into our fabric right here. We've also sealed the ends of all of the false ribs. We've sealed the ends of all of our tubes that do any of the wing bracing or anything like that. Anything that has an open tube into the wing, I like to seal those off. Even on the drag strut, I like to come in the end of the drag strut and go ahead and seal it out also with the painter's caulk, just to make sure that we don't get any metal shavings out in this wing. Then I'll come back through with my soldering iron, and any place that our anti-chafe tape goes over a rivet hole, we want to be able to find them later, so I'll come through before I start covering, and I'll burn all these holes through so that we can see those through our fabric. Let's get going. Okay, I've got my soldering iron warmed up, and I'm just going to go through and I'm going to burn through where our fabric rivets are going in. I'll do this over both wings all the way through. Just make sure we can find those holes when it comes time to do our fabric riveting portion of this. We don't want to miss any. So we just come through and burn those holes. In preparation for covering. Okay, we got ourselves a scrap piece of fabric from our earlier covering. Just going to get my poly tack. Just going to glue right around this edge, all the way around. Get a nice surface to glue that little sealing patch in there. I'm just going to glue right along this edge here, down to there. both sides. And we'll just get a rough idea what size patch we need. Something along that line right there. See what that looks like. Then just pull this little patch in here like this. And just go ahead and glue that into place along this front edge. Glue it in there like that. And laying down in there nice. Glue it right along that front edge. Pull it kind of tight. Go ahead and let that set up just a little bit. And what we've done there is we've sealed the inside of that tube out from any metal shavings being able to get out. And then we'll just go ahead and wrap this on over and glue it around this edge here. We'll trim it off and make it work. I'll let that set up first. And I'll do the same to the other side. I'm just going to seal that right off, and then we'll be moving on to getting this thing glued up and ready to cover. Okay, now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to put a bed coat of glue on our leading and our trailing edge. And we're going to go ahead and pre-glue our root rib, top and bottom, all along our our forward attached tang, and we're going to get all this stuff pre-glued and ready to lay our fabric on. Our bottom layer of fabric is going to go on first, and it's going to lap all the way over to the top of the root rib and all the way over to the top of the tip rib. So we're going to just cut our fabric about 8 inches long on each end, just so we got enough room to wrap right around the top of each one of the root and the tip rib. So I'm going to go ahead and start pre-gluing all this. I'll start out right here on the root rib. I want to soak a little bit of extra glue in where the tape's at. We're going to wrap that glue right around the inside edge. We'll go ahead and glue a nice line down the side of our tang, right across the front of that face of the root rib. That's the other side of this tang. Glue right down to the other end. Wrap that glue right to the inside. Do the same thing for the top surface, all the way around that trailing edge. And glue that top surface like that. That top edge right around our forward bow on the tip rib, on the root rib. Soak a little extra glue into that tape right around that edge. Then we're just going to probably just work one bay at a time. We'll just glue this leading edge right around to the top surface, just like that. Down to the top surface. Kind of keep an eye out for glue brush hairs and make sure we get any of those out of there. Not seeing any yet. Just going to continue one bay at a time until we get all the way down to around the leading edge and trailing edge. We'll do all those. We're also going to glue right across the top of our lift strut tang, right across the bottom side of our lift strut tang, and around this bolt. It goes all the way through from the top to the bottom in our H section, because we're going to have a little bit of a seam right there and a little reinforcing patch around that area. So I'm going to continue to do that all the way around the wing. I'm going to go ahead and do both of them, then we'll come back and we'll lay our fabric out. Okay, we've rolled our fabric out on our wings. We've already gone around and we've pre-glued the root rib and the tip rib. We've glued across the trailing edge and the leading edge. We've glued around our lift strut tang right here, and we've glued a bed coat around the box that opens up for the aileron control cable. And we're ready to start tacking this fabric down, and we're going to start right at the lift strut tang because we'll have to move this whole fabric down and slide it back into position. So I'm gonna reposition the camera and get over where you can see what I'm doing on that. Okay, we've got our pencil and our razor blade and our glue, and we're gonna take our lift strut tang. We're going to check each end of our fabric and make sure we've got a good overlap on each side that'll wrap all the way around the tops of the tip and the root rib. Then we're going to pull this fabric down. Just going to draw a circle around our bolt. It's going to protrude through the fabric. That's the bolt that goes from the top of the spar to the bottom through the H section. Then we're going to draw a line across our lift strut tang. We're going to see what distance we need to come out to clear that. And draw us a little line. We're going to make a flap up each side. Then we'll get our glue. Go ahead and put a little glue over where that's going over that bolt. A little glue across our cut line. Like that. We'll let that tack up, go back, cut that with a razor blade, and reposition the fabric and slide it into position. Okay, our glue's had a little bit of time to set up. We've reached under and measured just to make sure we're in pretty much the right spot. This line that I drew across here looks like it's going to end up being the fold. So I'm just going to come right up in here, that width done. And go ahead and cut that little flap right across through there. Get that opened up. And what that's going to do is slide, our tang's going to slide right through that slot. We'll cut this hole for the bolt after we get it in position to make sure we're in good shape on our distance. We'll just slide a whole piece of fabric back, drop it down over the tang, work it over those bolts, clear the bottom bolt under there. And we can see that we're going to be in pretty good shape. So we'll just position that where it works. Get our fabric straightened back out. See, the reason we haven't tacked the fabric anywhere else is we want to be able to slide the whole piece of fabric up and back. So then once we see where our tang's going to lay kind of flat up underneath the bottom there, we're going to go ahead and cut a hole for our bolt. You can cut that just a little bit larger than the size of the bolt itself. You don't have to cut it as big as the nut. We're going to get it to seal right over the top of it. So we can just pull that, stretch that right out and around that bolt. And then get him where he's even across through there. Just like that. And you can see we've now got our little flap coming up here to land on the top of that tang, give that some reinforcement. We'll just cut around the bottom, then we're going to come back and put a reinforcing patch on this as we go on with our covering process. So we don't want to actually glue this over the bolt, over the nut right yet, because we want to get some tension on the fabric after we glue it. So let's start out by just getting a little bit of glue under this flap. Pull that flap back up and just lay a little glue underneath it. And just glue that right down right there, and that'll hold that into position. Keep that from moving on us. And you can see the way we got our fabric going is I've left just enough on the leading edge to make sure I've got plenty of lap around the top side of the wing. So we have like 20 inches of fabric left on the back edge. We'll trim that off of the trailing edge of both these wings, and we'll use that for reinforcing patches and any other fabric needs we have as we continue on the covering process. So I'm going to go to the other wing. I'm going to get the lift strut tang cut in on it, and we'll come back and start tacking this fabric down. Okay, we've glued down the leading edge of this. We got this pressed down around that bolt right there on the lift strut tang. we've gone from one end to the other to make sure we're sitting kind of straight across through there. Now the next thing we're going to do, we're going to go ahead and get this base straight. We don't want to start down at the end and hope we're okay at this lift stroke. We want to get that done now, so we coated our hands in the liquid glove material. We'll get our MEK rag. We're going to come back through. We're just going to stick that leading edge down right there. Pull a little tension on it. And just wicking that MEK right into our bed coated glue. We'll let that set for just a moment. Start to turn white and tack up. Then we'll go around and do the same thing to the trailing edge. And then we'll start from here. We'll go to our root rib, and we'll go ahead and pull that tight and glue it all the way across our root rib. Then we'll come down to the other end, and we'll glue it to our tip rib down just across the bottom edge of the rib. So I'm going to go ahead and switch around and tack the back side of this. Just kind of straight down through there. A little tension on it. Nice neat line down through there. Tacking right into place and let that set up. We'll just let that set up for a little bit, and I'm going to go ahead and do the same to this other wing. We've already got it prepped up, so I'm just going to walk right on and get it done too. Okay, now we're attached to our leading edge and trailing edge right at the bay where the lift strut's at. Now what we want to do is we want to kind of find a nice center where our fabric doesn't wrinkle either direction. So we'll just go ahead and pull that kind of tight right there. I'm just going to go ahead and glue that. Just going to pull a little bit of glue down through the center here. Just right along that top edge. I'm just going to pull that nice and tight across through there. And get that to tack down. Doesn't have to be real tight. We can pull a bunch of that out with the iron. We just want to find a happy spot where everything's kind of laying kind of natural. What we're shooting for is to end up with a real nice clean edge across the front. So I'll be able to pull this corner. After that sets up, I'll be able to pull that corner with a little tension and lay that over and go ahead and glue that, and then we can come back and tack the rest of this leading edge. We'll tack the back edge and do it the same way. So we've got this kind of setting up for us a little bit right there. Feels like it's in pretty good shape. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this leading edge over a little bit. I'm just going to pull a little tension on it like that. There's a nice smooth edge through there, and I'm just going to go ahead and glue this right around this front edge and right back to here. Just going to catch the first 1.5 inches or so of that leading edge. Go ahead and glue that right through there. Sticking down good. And we'll just come back through and just rub a little line right on the top surface of that. And we'll get that to lay down. Just like that. You can see that stayed down real nice. I'm just going to hang on to this for a moment and let that dry up around that front edge, because I'm actually glued into that tape, our anti-chafe tape, so that takes a little bit longer to dry, and it doesn't tack quite as well as it does the aluminum tube. So we're just going to hang on to that and let this set up for just a moment. Then we're going to do the same to the trailing edge. Then we're going to walk down to the other end, and we're going to go ahead and tack the other end in the same manner, and then we'll go ahead and get our MBK rag, and we'll just tack down the leading and trailing edge all the way to the other end. Now we're going to take our trailing edge. We're glued back to right here, and we've got a little protrusion right here that's going to hold us up, so we're just going to glue that and cut it right along that edge right there. I'm just holding a little tension out with my left hand, and we'll let that set up just a little bit here. We just want to take our scissors and just cut in from this side. Right up to that. And cut it straight up to the edge of that protrusion right there, which is your inside hinge for your flap. Then we're just going to come in underneath this. Going to rub us a little glue right in there. We'll go ahead and pull a little tension on that, kind of finish out that trailing edge, pull that over and let that set up. In the meantime, we're in good shape to glue right across this while we're holding that with our left hand. And just come right back in. Put a little glue right down through there. And then just rub that right in. And I'm just going to hang on to that and let that set up for a little while. Okay, now I'm going to do the same thing to the opposite end of the wing. Just going to find my center through here. I want to glue the center just to this top tube, right down through here. I'm going to let that tack up for just a little bit. Then I'm going to come up here and I'm going to do the same thing to the leading edge. I'm going to pull a little tension back, get the wrinkles out of that leading edge, and we'll do the same thing to the trailing edge. And then we'll be ready to come through and go ahead and tack our leading and trailing edge. Okay, we're tacked all the way across this top edge right here on the root rib, just around the two pieces right here. We've tacked it in the center. And I've also tacked it down on the far end across the tip rib and each end of the leading and trailing edge up there. So what we're going to do next, we're going to get our MEK rag. And we're just going to come up here on the leading edge. We're just going to go ahead and start wrapping and tacking this around through here. And if we pulled enough tension down at the end, this should work out real smooth. Then we'll come back with our glue and we'll run a layer of glue over this tacked edge that we're doing right here. Just run this all the way down to the tip. Then we'll get our scissors. We've got a pretty good trail off this back edge over here. We might as well try and save that fabric. So we'll just come out about 2.5, 3 inches. We're just going to rip that right off along this back edge. Be down as much as 4 or 5 inches, doesn't matter. We're just going to salvage this piece of fabric to use to make patches with. So we'll take our scrap piece of fabric and set it on our table. And we'll get our MEK rag again. We'll do the same thing to the trailing edge. Walk that right out to the tip. Tack that down real nice. All the way up to the root. And we're getting close. Then we'll take our poly tack and we'll just do one bay at a time. We'll just go ahead and glue that right on. Because what we want to do is we want to be able to tension this fabric. And you can see that soaking through and turning dark. Just take one bay at a time. And where that's getting dark like that is soaking right through, waking up the bed coat underneath, and tacking that down real nice. We're being careful while we're tacking this leading edge. Again, like all the other parts that we've covered, we don't want to get too far over the edge where it glues it around to the inside. So we're going to do this same thing all the way around the leading edge and the trailing edge, and then we'll get back with you. Okay, we've gone around all of our borders and we've glued our fabric down fairly tight through there. It's almost getting to the ironing stage, but the first thing we're going to do is we're going to come through with our glue, or the next thing we're going to do, we're going to start gluing right along the edges, and we're going to get a little cut line on all of these borders where we're going to cut and finish the tape out. So we'll decide where that hole is going to be right in there for the drag strut brace. Then we'll glue right across here, and we'll glue a line down where we're going to cut for our forward attach point. Then I'm going to go down to the other end of the wing, and I'm going to do this same glue line like I did right here. Get ready to wrap that fabric around to the top edge. On the leading and trailing edge, and we'll let that set up. We'll come back and cut that. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go down to the other end of the wing, and we're going to glue around the open bay where your inspection hole is for the cable for the aileron controls. Okay, while we're waiting for our little edges to dry where we're going to cut to wrap our fabric around the front, we're going to go ahead and deal with this inspection hole right quick. We'll just pull any excess fabric we have back out of the way. That fabric laying kind of nice through there. We're going to get our glue, and we've already glued a bed coat around the top of this little inspection area. So we'll just go ahead and start out right here. Go ahead and get that glued up. We want this to get glued down real nice and tight. It's going to have a lot of tension on it. We're going to cut this fabric. After we get this glued down, we're going to cut it in and wrap it around the inside of those pieces of angle. We're going to just come right down through here. like that. Hold that down in there a little bit. Come right across the back side. Just get all this tacked down real nice. Around through there. And then we're just going to go ahead and glue it right across the top of this rib also. Just like that. And we're just going to let that go ahead and get set up real nice. Make sure everything's down in there real good. Let that set up good. Alright, let's got our inspection hole. We're gonna cut this out and cut our distance so that we can just wrap that around the inside of that angle right there. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and reset the camera, and we're going to come around and we're going to cut all of our edges, and we're going to wrap the tip rib and the root rib all the way to the top surface so that when we iron this, it doesn't pull loose from that end there, from either end. Okay, I'm just going to cut these edges just around to the top apex of this tube right here, leading edge. So cut it right along the edge and right down through there. And we just want to do that so that we can lap and finish that end right in there. I'm going to do this same thing down on the tip rib, and then we'll come back and start cutting around all of this to okay, we cut this little piece back just a little bit on the tip rib and the root rib so that we can come down and finish out our root and our tip. What we're going to do right now, we're just going to draw a straight line about the distance that this will come down on that forward attach point. And then we'll just go ahead and trim that in about like that. We can double check our distance here, make sure we're good. And I'm a little too deep on that. We'll figure out where we want to cut that to, which is about right there. Put that back up through there. Get our razor blade. Go and trim to the outside of that mark. Cut right through the center. Cut right through that mark there. And then we should be able to pull that down. Trim that into that point. And then these will wrap right in and glue right to the inside edge of that. So we'll just do a little bit of trimming here. Kind of manicure that around to where it'll lay right. Like that. That's going to work out just fine. Just like that. So we're starting to get to where we can lay all the way down around our rib. Then we'll come right down to this end. Then we'll get our pencil. Go ahead and fold that right into that drag strut brace. We're going to try and cut a hole right around the edge of it. So we need to know roughly where the edge of that's going to be. It's going to be about right there. It's going to be about right there. So we should be able to Should just be able to complete a circle. Right around our little marks, just about like that. And we're going to be trying to go right around this little ring here. So let's just go ahead and cut that out. And we can actually just split that right through the middle like that. Split it through the middle like that. And just continue that same manner through all the little triangles. That'll leave us a little bit of fabric hanging out, so that when we get over that, they'll be able to close that in like that. That one just a little bit. Everything opened up. Then when we finish this around to this side, we can just close all those right in just like that. It'll make a nice little hole around there. And then we've got our cable guide that's going to be right here, but we'll just leave that covered right across. We'll cut that out when we're ready to slide our cable in. So down here on this end, we've got our little tab hanging out for our flap. So we'll just draw a line right around through there where we want that to live. Then we'll cut that out. Just like that. Okay, so I'm going to get my scissors. I'm just going to kind of clean this stuff up just a little bit, and then we'll start wrapping this around and gluing it to the top side. All right, we're all cut out around here. Next thing we want to do, go ahead and flip this right back over. And we'll just glue that little edge right up in here. So that's going to glue along that edge. Glue it right down the front of that. Wrap that right back over and just press that right in. And we'll just go ahead and glue these over. Get in there nice and neat. Across that top edge. Put a little tension on that. Tighten everything up. I'm going to glue this first because that needs to set up quite a while before we can tension the rest of this. So we'll just start out with that little guy. We'll go ahead and let that set up for just a few. Make sure everything's laying like we left it. That's got your forward attach point sticking out. Now we're ready to go back here and glue around this. So we can do the same thing to it. We'll just lift out on it just a little bit. We'll reach our brush up around the back side, and we're just going to glue right around that whole little ring right there. And then pull that down around it. Pull it back in to hold a little tension. Then we'll just glue those little tabs right around the edge of that. Just like that. And then we can come back with our shoe iron. And we can iron out any wrinkles that we have in that. But it looks like this one worked out extremely well. Just like that. Gonna hang on to that for a minute. Come back and double check ourselves back here, and we just pull it off a little bit. Press that back into the wet glue. I'm going to add a little glue. And then make sure that's down real well. Looks good. Rub that through. And we'll just hang on to what we've got there. Let that set up. And we'll be ready to tack this on around the edge all the way around the bottom. Then when we iron that top surface, it can't pull loose. Then I'm going to go down and do the same thing to the tip rib. The tip rib is real simple. It doesn't have any protrusions on it, so it's just a straight wrap over to the top, so I'm not going to worry about filming that. I'm going to hang on to this until it dries, and I'm going to go down and do that one, then we'll get back to tacking this one around the top edge. Okay, we've glued this spot here on the forward attach point, glued down to here, glued around our drag strut fitting. Now we're just going to come up on the front and I'm just going to glue this little flap over. Brush that in like that. Just hang on to that and let that go ahead and set up a little bit. And all we're going to do from there is I'm just going to come through and I'm just going to pull this under and just glue it, just tack it all the way along this top edge, all the way around through there. And that'll get enough tension on that to where we can go ahead and iron our top surface. So I'm going to hold that in place and I'm going to glue the rest of that. Alright, we've gone ahead and glued all this around this other edge here along the top. I've just got to wrap just underneath it. When we flip it over, we'll wrap all that to the inside. Now I'm going to get my big iron and I'm going to heat it up to 250 degrees and we're going to go ahead and iron this surface down through here. Okay, now we got our iron set at 250 degrees. We're going to start ironing on the leading edge. We're going to start in the bay that has the lift strut tang in it. So we'll take this center rib right here on the bottom false rib, just lay our iron right on top of it. We'll just go ahead and start ironing down its length. Like that. Then we'll come over to the next rib. Iron down its length. Come back to this rib, do the same thing again. What we're trying to do there is we're trying to build a little tension from the trailing edge to the front so it doesn't wrinkle up on top of these ribs. So then we can just get out in the bay, 250 degrees. We'll just go ahead and iron right on down to there. Right out and around our lift strut tang. Back up to the front. And then I'm going to take this iron and just run right around the back side and do the same thing back there. Start all the way back here on this back edge. Run my iron right up the rib. Go back up and iron right up the other rib. We'll just start back here on our trailing edge and we'll start pulling that back to us. Take your time, let that iron lay in there for a little while and come up to temperature. Then from here on out, what we're going to do is we're just going to iron the top surface. We're going to jump from bay to bay, back and forth, from side to side. Start right in the false rib. Right out into the bay. Then we'll come up this other rib. Start pulling some tension on that. Right up to the front. Iron this little bay out. And I'm going to do the same process from side to side until I get the whole leading edge done. Then I'll come around and I'll do the trailing edge the same direction. So there's no sense sitting here watching me iron a wing. And now we've stepped around the other side. We'll just iron right down that rib. Continue to draw some tension on the fabric. Still right in that center bay where the lift strut tang's at. And we'll just tension that right on back to us over here. Just like that. That's got our center section nice and tight. Pulling some tension across through there. Now we're ready to go from here, and we'll jump from this side to this side, and we'll work our way out to each end of the wing. So we'll just go ahead and take this next section, iron down the main rib, up across the false rib, right down the next rib. And you can see the way that holds tension in. We got everything where we don't have any wrinkles up on our ribs. And we can just iron this bay out. Skip right back over to this side. Come back into our false rib. Pulling tension back. Right down the main rib. And then come through and just iron those bays out. We're going to continue to do this all the way across the leading edge back to about the spar, and then we'll go around the back side and we'll start back in the center again, and we'll start ironing the back of the wing up to this point. Then we've got our fold bracket that's still sticking up into the fabric right here. What we're going to do is we're going to iron all the way up to that, and that'll just leave a bulge sticking up in the wing. Then we'll come and glue that, and we'll just cut a little circle and just let that drop down the flat once we get everything ironed up to 250. I'll show you how that works here in just a moment. Okay, I've ironed the whole bottom surface of the wing to 250 degrees. With quite a bit of tension on it. We've got this wing fold fitting that sticks out right here. It kind of leans out at a little bit of an angle, so we're actually going to start our cut. I've gone ahead and glued that to reinforce it around the edge of it. And we're just going to start a little cut right around through there. Finish that out around this other side here. Like that. Finish that cut out, and we'll just pop that right over that edge and let that stick out, and then we'll get our iron, and we'll come back and we'll just kind of tension around that to get that to stand back up at the right angle. A little bit flat across the bottom of the wing. Just like that. And you see how that leans out at a little bit of an angle. So I cut my hole off to the side a little bit so it'd be centered up when I got there. And we can look down and see that's laying right nice and flat with the wing. The fabric is. And we can get a little bit of glue. Just come right around, just let that glue just run right down onto that fabric surface there. A nice bed around through there to hold that in place. And then we'll come back through later and we'll run a reinforcing patch around that. But that'll glue right to the side of that little tube real nice. Okay, we got everything ironed up to 250 degrees, and we've got a little patch done down there. Now what I've done is I've turned my iron up to about 300 degrees. And what I want to do is I just want to iron about the first 3 inches of this lap right through here up to about 300 degrees. I want to make sure this is real nice and smooth and pulled tight. And I'll take my MEK rag and I'll clean this edge and make sure that the fabric's not glued too far over. And then we're going to go ahead and lay out and do a bed coat of poly brush, which will be our seam sealant for the lap from the top fabric coming around. So I usually go ahead and take care of this while the wing's still upside down. So let's just do that now. Like I said, I just do about 3 inches of this leading edge. You don't want to iron the whole thing yet. You want to wait until you get your fabric rivets in, get all your taping done, and then come back and iron the wing on up to 350 degrees, just kind of working around your tapes. And what that does is it keeps your ribs from wanting to twist where they pulls tension up to the spar. So we're just going to do this 300 degrees, about 3 inches back, all the way down the leading edge and the trailing edge. Right. Now we can get our MEK rag, and we're going to just going to come right along this leading edge here, and we're just looking for that straight MEK line. That just lets us know that our fabric's not glued too far over. So we're just getting a little bit of it on there, back about 3/4 of an inch off the edge, just to make sure we got a nice clean edge here. Because we won't flip this back over until the top of the wing's covered. So we want to make sure we got a nice job on this. And that come out perfect. Being the professional fabric people that we are, we knew that it would. Looks beautiful all the way through there except for this one little piece right here. I can see a little bit of glue over too far. I'm going to go ahead and get my iron back on that. Now that I've got it broke loose with the MDK, I'll just go ahead and heat that with my iron and get that to pull back up flat. You know what, I've got my tape measure here. What I want is my top fabric, when I cover the top of the wing, I want it to lap over the bottom of the wing about 1.5 inches past the apex of the tube, or where that fabric leaves the bottom of that leading edge and trailing edge. I want to come back about 1.5 inches of that fabric, because our ultimate goal is to lay a piece of 3-inch pinking tape from this end to that end with this 1.5 inch lap right in the center of it. So that'll end up in the long run with 1.5 inches back to the center and 3 inches back to the back edge of the tape. What I like to do is I just like to lay my tape measure in, use my finger for a guide, lay my tape measure in until I can see my 1.5 inch marks right on the apex of that tube. So I can just go to the other end, get that 1.5 inch set up, and then I'll just drag that line right back to the other end of the wing. And that'll give me my indicator mark. It'll also let me know where to run my glue to. Back to the other edge of the wing, other end of the wing. Just like that. So that's my 1.5 inch mark. I'm going to do that on the leading edge and trailing edge. Then we're going to come back and put a little brush coat in that and get that bed ready for the top fabric to lap right into. Okay, now we've poured ourselves a little poly brush. Got us a 2-inch natural bristle brush. We're going to go ahead and go one bay at a time. We're just going to brush in a coat of poly brush right back to there, and go ahead and catch it up on the leading edge. Don't let it run over. Kind of keep a neat line across your pencil mark. You can overlap it just a little bit, it's fine. And you'll see something again when you're doing that, is you'll see that nice dark line start showing back up where your fabric's lapped real nice. Then when I finish brushing this bay right here, I usually just run over it again, get the bubbles out of it, and then I just do one quick run across the one that I just completed before, and that gets the rest of the bubbles out of that brush coat line. So we're going to do this all the way across the leading edge and all the way across the trailing edge, which we already got our line drawn back there too. Alright, there we go. Glued all the way along the leading edge, glued all the way across the trailing edge. And now we'll go ahead and flip the wing over at this point as soon as this sets up. And we'll go ahead and wrap our fabric around the inside and we're ready to cover the top of the wing. While you're waiting for your poly brush coat to dry on this seam or bed coat, it's usually a good idea at this point to come back with your poly tack. And just from the spar back, just run a little line right down the bottoms of your ribs. What that'll do for you, it'll glue that rib to the fabric. It'll keep that rib from warping as you pull tension when you're covering the top surface of the wing. Because as you get more tension back here with no fabric rivets in it, these rear ribs will tend to warp up just a little bit in there. I usually try to keep them as straight as I possibly can. I just run down through there with just a little bit of poly tack like that. And sometimes you need to lay a little bit of pressure down in the middles to get that to set to those ribs and glue good. So anything with a little bit of weight to it. So anything with a little bit of weight to it, I'm just drop it in the center of that bag. On each side, these are just boxes full of my natural bristle brushes, and you can see that line come up, and that'll start tacking down. I'll just walk right on down the line, just up to the spar on the trailing edge. And just run a little glue coat right down those. Keep them nice and straight. Travis's part boxes are always nice and clean, so they work real well for weight down through the center like that. Just up to the spar. Okay, we flipped our wings over. We've got the bottom covered. And when we come up to the top, we're going to double check and do another little inspection on the wings. Make sure that everything is sealed. All of the bottoms of all of the tubes have a little bit of painter's caulk in them. And that all of our anti-chafe tape is still sitting in place like we left it. And I've already come through, taken my soldering iron, and I've burnt the holes through for my fabric rivets in any place on the ribs where the tape covers your fabric rivet holes. On this back side here, on the top side of the wing, we've only drilled our fabric rivets 4 inches from the trailing edge of the rib tube up to the first hole. and 4 inches from there spacing all the way to the back side of the spar. And that's all the fabric rivets we'll need on the top. On the bottom side, we pre-drilled those holes 4 inches from the trailing edge on the bottom all the way to within 4 inches of the leading edge, and that was false ribs included. So we've done a little inspection on our wing, anti-chafe tapes over the top of all of our flanges on the ribs, all the way around to the nose. We put a little piece of anti-chafe tape on top of the wing lift strut bolt that goes through, and everything's sealed up and we're ready to go. Okay, we're ready to start covering the top surface of our wing. Our first job is to get rid of some of this excess fabric. Wrap all of this around to the inside edge of all of these tubes, leading edge, trailing edge, tip rib, and root rib. First thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to come through and I'm going to cut off some excess fabric here. Just kind of start getting stuff out of the way. Make sure you can see where you're going. And we just want to leave just enough fabric just to wrap around that inside edge there and glue all this in. On the trailing edge, we want to be able to wrap enough fabric in just to get past the apex of the tube, because we're going to take this top fabric and we're going to wrap it all the way around to this mark that we have on the bottom side. It's going to be wrapped all the way underneath. So we just need to get over the apex of the tube where it doesn't show a line in our top fabric. And what I'm going to do around the backs of these ribs is I'm just going to go ahead and cut right around them so we have plenty of lap. And you can take a pencil and just go ahead and draw your line where you'd like to cut those, like that, just like that, all the way across the trailing edge. And you can come up and do the same thing on the leading edge. We want to cut around to all of these little false rib right here. Those won't require any anti-chafe tape because the fabric bridge is well over the top of them. So we just want to come around each one of those with our cut, right around the front of the rib, just like that. Right around each one of these little false ribs, right around the main rib. So we're going to just cut in far enough to get past that apex right there. Then we're going to come to our pencil mark. We're going to cut right around the main rib. Pencil marks help a lot. They keep you from cutting too much fabric away. And get right around the rib just like that. Out to the end like that. Same thing on the leading edge. Get our fabric down inside of there. And we'll come around all the ribs. Then we'll come down here to the tip rib. I'm going to do the same thing we did on the root rib. Just going to cut the excess fabric away. Okay, down here on the tip rib, you can see we've cut in, we've left about 3/4 of an inch of fabric. And what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to glue it to each one of these tabs just behind the bolt hole. And then we'll come back and cut that along each side to wrap that around the inside. That way we've got a nice secure lap there. So we'll just get our glue. Go up underneath these. And we'll just go ahead and just get those glued right on down. And you'll have to hold each one of those for a moment while they stick. It's a very cold day here in Kentucky, so the glue is drying extremely slow. Just want to get that to where it'll stay down. Glue underneath, a little bit on top. Exercising patience, which I have very little of, but it's doing a good job. And I'm going to do this and glue each one of these down right up to the leading edge, and then we'll come back and we'll cut each one of those and we'll wrap that onto the inside. Okay, we've glued all these down to the tops of our little tabs, and now we're just going to come back through and we're just going to cut these to where we can wrap this fabric around the inside edge. We've let these set up for a little while so that they'll stay put while we're cutting them. That. We'll go ahead and trim this little tail around just a little bit right here. We want to be able to wrap that to the inside, so we'll just, probably the best bet on that is just to go ahead and do a straight in cut right there, and then we'll finish that tail out. So we can just come in with our glue. We'll just lay it up under that edge, and just go ahead and soak that fabric. Glue right there. Put another layer over the outside because this has already got a little glue on it coming from the other side, so we have to glue both sides. And then just go ahead and wrap that straight down to the inside of the airplane. Stick real nice. Keep working that until it stays where you put it. Glue's drying as you go, so it'll eventually get to where it loves its home. Right up to the inside. Wrap around that tube a little ways. And once you get that glued over, you come back through and just glue a little surface like that and just rub that in. That'll make sure that's got a good solid glue joint while that's all still wet. You don't want to wait and come back for that because you don't want it to set up completely. Just want to be able to get that glued down. We're going to do this same thing all the way along this whole edge. And then we'll set the camera back up at the other end. And we'll start wrapping our root rib over in the same manner. Put a little bit on the bottom side, a little bit on the top side. Start wrapping that right into position. 1.7 ounce fabric's pretty thick, so it's it has a good memory. It wants to come back up. So you have to make it go where you tell it to go. When you're covering a Firefly or a smaller aircraft that's using the 1.6 ounce fabric, this lays in a lot easier than this heavy fabric does. Once that starts to tack up, you'll feel that it starts taking hold and staying in place. Just get everything smoothed out, get your glue. Do the same thing again, just a little coat there, a little coat there. Not enough to run off on the rest of your fabric, just enough to get a nice coat there, because you're also, when you're doing that, you're also making a nice bed coat for the top fabric to glue to when we get to this point. So we're going to go ahead and finish all the rest of these out, run on around to the front, we'll switch to the other end. Okay, we've glued the top of the tip rib down there. Now we're just going to glue our root rib over, get this flap to the inside. Then we're going to come back and just glue all of these little flaps. We're just going to glue them right up to the inside here and get all those out of the way. Once we get done with this tip rib, all the way across the leading edge and all the way across the trailing edge, we'll come back in with our iron, and we'll go ahead and iron these two ends, because the fabric on the top is going to lap over these again, so they'll be double covered on both ends. And so we'll want to get some tension on that before we cover the top. So I'm just going to start out gluing this tip rib here. Just take it a little piece at a time, doing the same way we did the tip, we'll do the root here. So we'll just hold that over, spread a little down in there. This one's a little easier than that tip rib because we don't have all the protrusions sticking in that hold our wingtip on. So we'll be able to glue them down fairly rapidly. And we're going to do this the same way as we did the tip, because once we get that glued into where we like it, then we'll just come back, put another little layer of glue on there, and just rub that down nice and smooth. That'll give us a nice bed for our top fabric to glue to. Just take a little piece at a time. Glue right up, get plenty on the fabric. And across through there, hold it down in the back. Just start rolling it over. Man, that's going down real nice. Take that right onto the end. Starts going too well, we like to get a little bit ahead of ourselves. We don't want to get spoiled. Fold that one over. Start laying that down where we want it to go. Then once we get this glued and this is dry, at that point we're solid enough. Once we get all the way up here to the tip, get all that glued over, we'll come back and we'll make sure everything is ironed around on these edges, and we'll go ahead and iron that on up to temp. Just like that. I'm going to go ahead and move on around to my trailing edge now, and we'll start heading down this way. I'll come back and finish up the rest of that tip when I head around the leading edge. So we'll just find us a nice comfortable spot to work. And we got one little tail right there that isn't stuck down yet, so we'll go ahead and get that out of the way. And then we're going to have to make one little cut right here. Cut this back. Cut that right out of our way right there. We should have pre-glued that before we cut it. Okay. Just want to take one rib at a time. Just lay your brush all the way down to where it's glued from the other side. And dip a little more glue. Go ahead and carry it on around the tube a little ways. Don't put so much on this that it wants to run off to the other side. So come back and catch it if you see it trying to act like that. We'll just hold this down with our finger right here so that that'll stay down around that edge. And then we'll just go ahead and start working that around. And then we'll just come back with our glue brush. And we'll glue that right on down to the inside, right around the trailing edge. Around through here. Just get that to lay right on down for us, just like that. We'll come back and make sure we don't have anything running around the edge. Now we're still holding this down right here. Then we'll come over here and we'll grab the other side and we'll do the same thing on this spot. And then that'll probably by that point stay. So we'll just let that come back just a little bit. Glue our line down through there. Come back and glue a little line across the top. Just like that. Put our finger back in place. Hold that down. And we'll just go ahead and roll that right on into position. Fix this little spot where it tried to come up, but that glue will still be soft back here, so we can still come back and fix it. Pull the tension around on that. Catch any excess glue, because it'll, when you push forward on it like that, it'll try and squeeze out the back. So we'll just go ahead and take that right on down just like that. You don't have anything running anywhere. And that's the way we're going to do this all the way down to the other end. We're going to get all this wrapped all the way around just like that. We're going to do the same thing on our leading edge. I might shoot just a little piece of the leading edge when I start it, but no sense sitting here watching me glue to the other end. So we'll just, I'm just going to hold on to this till this sets up a little bit here. And then I'm going to go ahead and glue the rest of all of this down around the top edge of the root right there. And we'll be ready to start wrapping our corners and getting everything fixed up to cover the top. And we'll have one more little bay down where our inspection hole is, where we can hook our, where our cable comes through for our ailerons. While we're at this stage, we'll go ahead and cut that also after we get all these edges glued down here. We'll cut that inspection hole out. We'll get it glued to the inside while we'll be right there getting to it. You don't have to reach inside and guess at it. And that is set up and looking good. Okay, we've glued all the way around all the way across our trailing edge, tip rib all the way across the leading edge. We'd already pre-cut all this, so it all just laid in real nice and neat around all the ribs. And we've already glued this leading edge right here, wrapped it around to the inside. We're letting that set up real nice and solid so that we can iron this next. So the next thing we need to do here is we need to trim this just neatly around through here. I'm leaving about 3/16 to 1/4 of an inch around through there. And we're just going to put a little bit of glue behind it. Just like that. And we're just going to let that set up, and then we'll come back with our shoe iron and we'll just iron that right around to make sure that all this stays when we iron this. We're also going to take our shoe iron and we're going to kind of heat along all of these edges that are going to try and pull apart. So I'm going to go on down to the other end, this same cut that I've made right here on the tip, on the leading edge. I'm going to do the same on the front and the back of the tip rib. nice and neat around through there. Nice and neat around through there. Then we'll get our glue. We'll just go ahead and put a little bit of glue up in there. Around that edge. And around that edge. Then we're ready to get our shoe iron. And go ahead and iron those around. Now we got our shoe iron set at about 350 degrees. And we're just going to come around and start shrinking that around that radius right there. Like that. We're just going to finish that edge over. Bed it down into the glue we just put back there. We've had it just tacking up just for a few minutes. It don't have to tack long. And then I always like to come back and just go ahead and make sure everything is tucked over this edge nice and neat. Especially on this little 5/16 tubing on the front edge. It tends to pull off pretty easy. And then just go ahead and finish that right around through there. And go ahead and just let that set for a moment. And it doesn't hurt to come back through. Just put another little layer of glue right over the top edge of it, just like that. And we need that to set up pretty good because the next thing we're going to do, we're going to come in here and we're going to iron this in to 350 degrees. So I'm going to go in here right now. I'm going to make sure that I'm well down around these edges. Well down around those edges. I'll just put a little bit of tension there just to make sure everything's laying flat, looks real good. I'm going to go down and do the same thing to the tip rib. Finish those little edges off. Right there around those corners. And just keep shrinking it till it finds this little radius around through there. Down good and looks neat. There. And again, I'm going to come back and just put a little glue around those edges. Let that soak right through there. Then we're ready to set up our big iron and just go ahead and set it for about 300 degrees, and we're going to go ahead and iron these ends. And then once we know everything's sitting there the way we want it, we'll go ahead and take those right on up to 350 degrees right here, this end and on the tip. We've got everything glued and we've let it set for a little while. We're fairly sure that everything's good to go on these. We're going to go ahead and take our iron right on up to about 300 degrees. We're just going to go ahead and tension this rib end on the root and around to the tip. It's a good time to chase any wrinkles out there you may have. It's just working out real well. it all the way down to this end there. Just like that. That feels just perfect. Now, if you think you may have glued over the edges a little bit too far, you can come back with a little MEK and clean these edges up. I can see that mine feel and look real nice, so I'm just going to leave them alone. And yours should actually be in about the same condition. I'm going to step down and iron the other end to 300 degrees, like I have this one set. And then I'm going to go ahead and turn this iron on up to 350, and I'm going to go ahead and tension that right on final tension. Okay, we've got everything prepped on this wing to take us all the way through and are ready to cover the top surface. There's one little piece we've got here, this little bay that's going to be opened up that we put the angle around. It's probably a good idea right now just to go ahead and open that up while we don't have any top fabric. We can actually see what we're doing in here and we won't have to feel around the edges. So I just made myself a little piece of aluminum. I just sheared it to 3/4 of an inch wide, and that way our fabric will just lay right up in where we want it to go. So we'll just draw that line around through here. Give us an idea where to cut the fabric to. And then we know we'll just come out at each one of these corners at a 45-degree angle. And we'll wrap those up. Now we don't want to cut all this out of here at once and turn all that loose. It's glued to the bottom, but we do have quite a bit of tension on this. So the first thing we want to do is we want to cut this piece out along this side, and we'll go ahead and get that wrapped up to the side of that rib. Now we can see that we're going to have a little bit of a area that's going to have to glue a little different, but we can work around that pretty easy. So let's just start out by gluing that seam to keep it from fraying. We'll glue right out our 45, glue a little line across through there, down through there, across through there, down through there, on our 45s. That way, when that sets up, we'll have sealed edges, and we can go ahead and start wrapping that up around the edges. So we'll go ahead and let that set up, and then we'll get us a good sharp razor blade. We'll start out by cutting this corner right back here, and we'll go ahead and get that wrapped and glued up and sealed, and get that to where it's finished, and then we'll start doing each side as we go and get this stuff wrapped off all the way around through here. So we'll let that dry. We'll get back with the razor blade, cut it out. Okay, we've got our good sharp razor blade. Drawn our lines around through here, and we've glued them. So I'm just going to start up in that corner. Going to work right out to the edge. Do the same thing right back here. Cut right back through to there. Back through to there. Cut right through there. That way we've still got our tension from here to here. Everything's staying pretty tight. We can go ahead and get this wrapped on up into place here. So we're going to do a little cut right across the front of that. We're going to cut around the front side of that piece there. We'll just go ahead and sink that whole piece down. We're going to work with right here. Go ahead and glue a bed coat up to the side, wherever we'd like that to stay. We'll let that bed coat dry. Let the glue dry on this. Little flap we're going to glue in there. Pull the tape back up and let it go ahead and glue itself into place. And we'll let that dry just a little bit, and then we'll flip that right on up and start gluing it to the inside of the rib. We'll go ahead and take a piece of this and that tape off right through here to get a little more glue surface to that aluminum there. Take a piece out there. And we'll just go ahead and put a little glue on the side of that rib and let it set up. Like that. And once the bed coat starts to get nice and dry, I'll hold this like this. And we'll come in, we'll put another wet coat on top of the coat that gets dried. Again on the fabric, then we'll just go ahead and start wrapping that right up to the side just like that. We want to make sure we get this well glued, because it will be holding the tension of that fabric all the way around that other side. We're just going to kind of hold that in place, let it get nice and glued up. Kind of holding it in with my fingers over that rib, because when this dries, I'm going to trim this down this side and let that fabric just wrap right onto the inside. Continue to make sure that that stays well adhered to that piece of aluminum right there. Right back here. Once that starts to set up, come back and add a little glue to it. And you can see the way that starts laying in there real nice. We'll just let that find its home. And that looks awesome. That glued in real nice. I'm just going to hang on to this and just let that set all the way up.